Well, it's a pleasure to talk to you again, sir. Here we are.
Hey,
Again, this is
same
becoming
here.
a habit. This is becoming a habit here.
I love it.
So, excuse me. So today, we're gathering to talk about another film of yours. This one is playing at the Sawdust City Fright Fest, if second weekend in October. It's called The Old Ones. I had
Yep.
the pleasure of seeing it at the Night of Horror Film Festival in Eau Claire back in March,
Yeah,
and I
yeah.
and I really dug it there. And we had talked about it before, and you had sent me the screener, but then I was like, you sent me the screener. Then, like a week and a half later, not even a week later, I discovered about the A Night in Horror Fest, and I saw, oh, I could see it on the big screen, so I'll just wait to
Ooh,
see it on the big screen. So that's what I did with that, and happy I got to see it in a theater. It was a fun experience, and yeah, happy we could coordinate some time to talk about your film, The Old Ones. Well, H.P. Lovecraft's The Old Ones.
yes, yes.
So
I don't think he'll be offended.
no, I mean, if there's anybody I'm not worried about offending, it'd be H.P. Lovecraft. So the old ones, if you mind telling my listeners a little bit about what it's about.
Well, it's sort of a sequel to The Deep Ones,
Mhm.
where the Robert Miano character, who died in the first film and was or we thought he died, and comes back and he's free of the old one that was possessing him throughout the entire film of The Deep Ones. He's a bad guy in
Right.
that. He's a good guy in this. And he's released from that, and he's kind of his own man once again after 80 odd years. And he's able to kind of think on his feet and, has this energy of, hey, I want to get back to my time, the 1920s, and get, my wife back and get all the wrongs that I've done with an old one in me for the
Sure.
past 80
Yeah.
years. I want to right those wrongs. So he ends up hooking up with this kid, and they kind of go on this adventure of, trying to find the resonator and reverse time and go back. And, it's kind of filled with monsters and mayhem and some jokes here and there. And, to me, it was kind of Phantasm 2 meets Lovecraft was my
Yeah.
inspiration of the whole thing. And we had a lot of fun doing it. And it was one of those things where, you take you're inspired by Lovecraft and his characters and his stories, and you kind of put them in something, and you kind of try to make it your own, and then throw in some other this and that, and you hope it works. And sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. I'm happy with it, and I hope it finds its audience, and that's really all I can say.
Yeah, well, I mean, Lovecraft adaptions in general, because of the way Lovecraft writes, are a challenge. I know.
Yes.
I have our friend, my friend Dawn. She's a huge Lovecraft fan, and she's part of Sawdust City Fright Fest, so she really dug seeing this film. And I'm not too familiar because I don't read a huge amount anymore. I used to when I was a kid,
Sure, sure.
but every impression I get with Lovecraft is people are like, yeah, we kind of took it, but then we also want to make it our own because it's heavy, it's dense. What kind of challenges did you have for adapting this?
Well, I think that's the thing with this one. It was more of kind of taking elements from his stories and putting up, whereas the deep one was more of, Shadow over Innsmouth, and
Sure.
that was really kind of followed that story and that kind of
Hmm.
plot along. Whereas this one was just kind of, take a character from here, rats in the wall or whatever it might be, and kind of intertwining them into something that like I said, more of a road trip movie and
Sure.
something with these, characters meeting these characters in these little pockets of this world. And whereas Unspeakable Beyond the Wall of Sleep, my third of the Lovecraft trilogy, I call it, was really following Lovecraft's Beyond the Wall of Sleep completely. I mean, that
Mm.
was everything from that story with characters interjected from my first film, Unspeakable, and kind of winding it into this same Lovecraft world. But it followed his short story pretty closely, whereas Deep Ones kind of just pulled characters from numerous stories and some of his poems and things like
Mhm.
that, and kind of just wind them into this Lovecraftian world.
Yeah, yeah. With old ones, it did feel a bit like an amalgamation of Lovecraftian. I mean, it's definitely set within it. I think you established that world well, and I love how you start off with your monsters, which you do have you have a returning character just briefly from the deep ones in here with Kelly Maroney showing up as Ambrose. How was it getting her back? Because I mean, it is only a very short scene, but she's in a lot of makeup, like a number of folks.
Right, right. Well, in the first film, she was dragged off to the sea and,
Mhm.
to the nether world of the bottom of the ocean. And for this one, she came back, waterlogged and kind of, inspired by Romero's Creep Show and
Mhm.
Ted Danson. And Galen Ross come back from the sea and they're bubbling and bubbling. And Joe Castro, again, did an amazing makeup job on everything for that. But, Kelly was a real trooper. She came out, it was like 3 days, like three or 4 days of just heavy nonstop rain.
Sure.
And the one day she's shooting, that's one of the heavy nonstop rain days. So she got soaked, she got, whatever, and she was a trooper rolling around in the mud, and, everything was fine.
Oh man, yeah, it looked like it was a bit soggy there, not just because you were by a river or whatnot. So,
A large puddle.
a large puddle. Beyond the Wall of Sleep, you mentioned. So it would that one as well. Is that a sequel as well to your, or is it just kind of those same
Well,
characters integrated
it's
in?
pulling some of the characters from my first film because
Hmm.
my first film, it ended where everything's a dream.
Sure.
And so when that film came about, the idea to make a sequel to that, which is another horror story unto itself, the star of the original Unspeakable, Roger Garcia, basically approached me. He's like, "Hey, you're doing all these sequels. Why don't you do a sequel to Unspeakable?" And I'm like, "Because it didn't make any fucking money." Yeah, but look, I think it would be great. We do this. We follow the Jim Phelps character. We do this. I'm the star. I mean, I'm like, "Look, you find 100 grand, we'll go do it." He runs off. A month later, calls me up. "I got 100 grand. I got an investor. He's ready to go. He loves the idea I pitched to him."
And you're like, ah, crap.
Oh no.
Oh no.
So I started, so he wanted to base this entire film in a prison where the guy
Sure.
from the first film is sent to prison for molesting his daughter. And he's, goes through all
Yeah.
these adventures in prison and whatever, blood and guts everywhere. And the location fell through for that. So I basically said, "Look, Roger, I got another idea where we take, your character from this film and interweave it with Lovecraft's Beyond the Wall of Sleep," because I remembered he had this story that dealt with dreams and whatever,
Yep.
and would work with the dream of, the Unspeakable film. "Oh, that sounds great. Let's do it." So I write up the script. I was like, really like, wrote it in like a week.
Sure.
And I'm like, "I'm loving this. This is great." Reread the Lovecraft story, was really digging it. It worked well. Everything just fit. It meshed. I was so excited. And then, I'm like, I got my gut's telling me, "Get the money, get the money, get the money.
Sure.
Don't send the script. Don't send the script. Don't send the script." And so, but my, hubris got the best of me, and I'm like, "Oh, he's gonna love it. He's the lead. He's throughout the whole
Sure,
film. What's
sure,
not to
sure.
love?"
Yeah.
I sent him the script, nothing. 3 days, nothing. I'm like, "Oh my God, this guy's calling me up every fucking 5 minutes to, yak my ear off about crap." And now he's gone radio silent. So I finally call him up. I'm like, "Roger, what did you think of the script?" Uh, uh, I told you no penises. There's penis monsters on page 1 to page 99. That's nothing but penis monsters. And I'm like, "What the hell are you talking about? You didn't say anything about no penis monsters. I sat down with you over coffee, going over the script, and everything out of my mouth was, make sure you don't put any penis monsters in this." I'm like, "Oh, because, a lot of times when I have these production meetings and people are talking about other projects and trying to get them off the ground, it's just, mouth movement until they
Sure.
actually show up with the money. You're kind of like, you don't listen."
Yeah.
So I missed the part about him saying no penis monsters. And he pulled out of the project, pulled his investor out of the project. I called up Susan Prever and said, "Hey, can you find an investor for this? We got, a great role for you if you can." "Oh, sure, sure. How much do you need? I'll go find it." So I rewrote the character for her, one of the characters, made it a woman, sent her the script. She loved it, found the money for it, and we went off and made it.
Yeah. And full disclosure, that did get submitted. Unfortunately, it didn't get selected, but we did pick the old ones.
Those are the penis monsters.
Well, no, actually, what's funny is we're going through the reviews. We'll pull back the curtain a little. We've got the submissions. We also got submissions for another penis monster story, and we're like, what's going on with all the penis monsters in indie cinema suddenly? I mean, it doesn't bug us, but it just like, well, this is a trend we didn't expect to see.
Right.
But you know, they did pick the old ones, and I'm glad they did because I love it quite a bit. Yeah, the practical effects. I mean, you waste no time, and that's what I love about it. Is like, okay, for some indie films, they're good, but you're waiting for that creature, or you're
Right.
waiting for that. You know, you'll get that stinger in the beginning to help pull in your distributors because I know that
Right.
game. I know that game a little bit. You know the whole Roger Corman within 5 minutes give him boobs, blood, and a body count there.
Right.
But here you know that you get into it right away, and then it just doesn't stop. Our two characters here just keep going. Russell Marsh, and then the son. Is it? Oh, I
Oh,
forgot his
Ben
name. Ben.
Gideon is his
Yeah,
character.
Gideon. Yeah, Gideon, and they're on the road, and suddenly this is a H.P. Lovecraft road trip.
Well, I think that was the thing of wanting to branch off from the deep ones, which was more like you said, a sting in the opening, and then
Yeah.
wait, monster at the end. This was kind of like throw that out the window and do monsters from the get and go all the way through it.
Yeah, and the monsters looked great. I love the look of them. It took me back a little bit to the older school monster films, that I grew up with, and you keep it practical for pretty much 95%, from what I could tell,
Yeah,
95% of your special effects are all practical effects, and
yeah, for sure.
eh,
No, and that's something I love to see. It's whenever you see, even if it's good CG, it kind of pulls you out of it. I mean, for me, it's get as much as you can practical, even if it might become off a little schlocky. I mean, look, I love Attack of the Killer Shrews or the giant Gila monster or these things that are just so you could sit and watch them or just have them running in the background and they're just so warm and inviting. And it was for me wanting to make something like that with monsters where it's not something that's pretentious or annoying or whatever. Even if you hate the movie, the people making it had fun and enjoyed doing it and are doing it for the love of it, not to make a quick buck or to whatever it is. It's about the love of the genre.
Yeah, Robert Miano looks like he's just having so much fun with this role. He just, even when he's getting choked with a tentacle in the bathroom. Tell me about the logistics, because out of all your creatures, there's two creature effects in here in particular that surprised me because I'm watching it and I'm in the movie, but also my movie brain and critic brain behind me going, wow, that had to be kind of complicated to pull off. Was the tentacle creature, and then later on, Nyla Thotep, those two effects. How challenging were those?
No, well, those actually were pretty tricky, especially, you pitch it to Joe and he's like, oh, this is, that's tough. This is tough. And then, he comes up with these great ideas and these great drawings. And you check it out and you're like, hey, on paper, this looks amazing. This is going to be great. And then 9 times out of 10, when you usually get there, they fail or they look like shit or whatever. But with Joe, it's like, I'm always impressed because it looks great when you get there. It,
Mhm.
2 or 3 takes, you've nailed it. And, this was no different. It really came off without a hitch. And they both, looked great especially with, the limited crew and the limited resources.
Right.
When you really think about that and shooting it within a couple hours, in a few takes, my hat's off to it. Those two effects really were a lot of fun to shoot, and they look really good.
Yeah, they come off well. They're very effective. I like how and you get creative editing in there too, especially with the bathroom scene to help avoid seeing any possible wires or other things with it.
Right, right, right. No, and the actor Paul playing, the monster really pulled it off. Well, I mean, that
Mhm.
guy was giving 110%, screaming and kicking and flailing on the ground. I mean, I believed he was transforming, and that's another thing that really helps. Any effect is the performance with an actor. If you get
Right.
an actor who really, has his heart and soul into it, you can really work even more magic to the effect.
Yeah, and I think it really makes for a more fun and a bit intense scene. You got a couple actually intense moments in here, but funny moments as well, and funny characters, side characters, like waiter, waitress, Nadine. What? I love. Don't get me wrong. I love Nadine, but it's just like I'm watching. You're watching the film, and all of a sudden, you get their server come up in the cafe, and you're like, okay.
I think that's one of the, just another one of those weird things where originally I think it was Bai Ling was going to play the waitress.
Ah,
And
okay.
again, because she had a role in the deep ones as
Sure.
well, and then the scheduling conflict messed that up, and Tim Muscatel replaced her. And there was all this talk, hey, should he play a man? And I'm like, no, put him in a wig and throw their dress on him. Who cares? He's an alien, it's go for that way. And this was kind of the same thing, but more of just John Budenoff is great. And I had just worked with him on Scalper, and I was like, hey, I want to give him a role, and this popped up, and he was cool with the blue eyeshadow and the waitress uniform, and he had such great chemistry with Kurt Bonzel that it was when they're together, it's just
It,
hilarity on the set, and it was one of those things that I I had to go with it.
I would love a short film of a cafe set in the world of H.P. Lovecraft with those two running the cafe. That would
Oh, that'd
be
be great.
the way those two. You're right. I'm just looking at them going, I think these two sub characters are like, these side characters are like, I could watch a series with them just serving, weird shit happening at the
Right.
cafe because of Lovecraft, and they just rolling with it.
Hey, I'm gonna write that down. I like
But yeah, I also like the chemistry between Robert Miano and Benjamin Phillip, who plays Gideon. Those two seem to really be able to trade off each other quite a bit. You worked with Miano before. How'd you get Phillip? Would you work with him before too? Or
actually, Ben, or no, not Ben, the Paul, the guy who just played the monster in the bathroom,
right?
changing. He recommended Ben.
Mm,
Ben did an audition, sent it on tape. It was great, and that was about it. I mean, Robert and Miano and I met with them, and they, I could see across the table as they're eating that
sure.
and they were talking, and they had just a good look together and a good chemistry. So, it was kind of a no-brainer. Casting is one of those things. For me, it's usually if I work with an actor and they're good and they show up and they know their lines, I work with them again and again
Sure.
and again because it's hard to find somebody who has all three of those, knows their lines, good personality, fun to
Mhm.
be around on set, doesn't complain, and works cheap. So those things are and Ben was no exception. He was up
Sure.
for all of that.
Yeah, you pull it off. Well, I imagine you had a tight shoot schedule. You mentioned you're doing like 2, 3 takes, maybe more, not too many more. How long did it take you to shoot this?
I think that one was 9 days.
How many?
9.
With all those effects and everything, 9 days. Wow, you
It's
guys hit.
usually it's usually between 9 to 10, 9 to 10 days
Mhm.
on most of them. 120-page script will be 12 days
Sure.
usually, 11 or 12, and I think that was like a 90-page script or 88 or something.
Wow, you had to be hopping for that.
You got to do like 10 pages a day, 10, even 15, depending on the location. And that's the thing again about using the same actors or the same crew is they're used to that.
Mhm.
Style and that way of working, and you have 2 or 3 takes, and you move and you move and you move, and you get it done. It's something that when you have no budget, it's like the one Dorothea, the project I'm working on now. We had a church location, and then this other location, and this other location in one day, and it was like, okay, seeing we're shooting at a courthouse, get rid of the church, make it that they get married in a courthouse. So now you're
There you
shooting those
go.
scenes. So it's just kind of thinking on the thing and getting
Sure.
rid of things that are not only okay, that's a neat location and all, but you've got to drive here and there and set up. But if you do it all there, you can get that many at the same location. So it's just kind of doing that. And after you do it so many times, it's kind of ingrained in your mind when you're going through the schedule, and it's like, okay, let's move that, let me rewrite that to, instead of a church, it's a courthouse. And you just kind of do that, and that same method was applied on old ones. And one thing interesting on old ones was we were again shooting in that like 3 days in the pouring rain near that swamp area.
Mhm.
And then we finished all that stuff, and then we were at a Victorian house, and the DP comes up to me and he's like, I think we're missing some footage.
Oh
And I'm like,
no.
oh my God, I never do reshoots. I never go back to things. So I'm like, well, can it be cut out? And he's like, no, it's this whole fight scene in the woods and whatever. And then I started looking around at the location of this Victorian house, and I'm like, well,
Sure.
he's got a backyard and he's got some bushes, so let's just shoot it all right here. And we ended up, I went in my backyard, cut down a whole bunch of brush, brought it to the locations to kind of make it look like that, and we shot it, and it matched right in.
I was gonna say it matches up. You can't tell.
Yeah.
So kudos there. The house you were shooting at, was that for Tillingast's house?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, the Tillinghast design too. That looked like it took some work. I mean, there's all kinds of parts and cables and wires coming out of him, and
No, again, Joe did, an amazing job of making, this man part machine,
Mhm.
part of the resonator, and part human, or part, mentally gone, all these things. And he, again, I think we shot there like one day or 1.5 days.
Oh
And it was
wow.
one of those things that, you know, the speed of which to shoot it and for him to get the effects done and looking good, and, and with the lighting and all this stuff, it's really phenomenal. And I think that's the fun part of once you find a team like that you work well with,
Right.
and you know that what they're capable of, and you can kind of,
Well,
in the back of your mind when you're writing a script, you know what can be done in those, amount of time.
well, and especially if you've got those same people working together all the time, they get familiar with each other, and then you're not they've got a chemistry as well, and they know how to work in a repertoire between one another. They know how to joke, or
Yeah.
who they know who to rely on for what.
Yeah, exactly.
Though as elaborate and as interesting as Tellengas design was, I'm gonna say my favorite, I think, are the little guys that are Tellengas, little creatures that you have, which again are also all practical. I
Oh yeah.
mean,
Jeff Leroy, really, I mean, he's amazing when it comes to miniatures and, all
mhm.
these like in-camera effects and stuff. And he created those, and we had those on strings, and we had, little mechanical puppets, crawling across the floor. And I mean, that was a blast. And it's one of those things that's so much better than, digital trickery, where it's you're
Right.
seeing it, you're feeling it, you're whatever. And then if you need to hide a wire with the computer or whatever, you go in and you do it. And that it's so much more fun. Even in editing, you see it
Yeah.
there, and like, oh, that works, and that works, instead of imagining that you're going to put this stuff in later.
And did you get to keep any of the little guys, or did he take them all?
No, he took them
He
all.
took them all. He's going to
Bastard.
repurpose those later. Yeah.
Of course.
In true indie fashion, because you gotta use it. Uh, and yeah, I dug the story you came up with. We've got three folks who chase our Russell March, and
Right.
um, this trio was interesting as well. I loved how you incorporated a severed head into this, and then it went from there to the security character,
Right, right.
and I just loved those three as well. Where did those guys come from? Those characters.
Well, yeah, Timothy Muscatel this time returned as, the security guard.
Yeah.
He was in Deep Ones playing a the female doctor, but he's another actor I've worked with,
Mhm.
forever now. Jerry Irons was also in the Deep Ones. He brings his character back. Cyril O'Reilly, from Porky's, he replaces Robert Ryan,
Mhm.
his character, because Robert Ryan, I think, was out of the country or something. And I'm
Sure.
like, well, we got to shoot this, so you'll work.
You'll
And
work.
another character from Deep Ones, Brandon, replaced him, and he shaved his head like him, and so it was kind of a similar enough thing. But it was one of those things where you tried to get the original people all back, but some
Sure.
of them were like, we're not available or interested, or fuck you, we never want to hear from you again.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
what's his face passed away. Nicholas Costa.
Oh
He
yeah.
was going to be in it as well, but he passed away, and he was replaced by Roger Garcia again, who
Mm.
was wanted to do the Unspeakable sequel. So
Sure.
it's how these things come together.
And you even got the actress Sylvia Spross
Yes.
as Miss Marsh, though she was someone else in the Deep Ones, wasn't she?
Yes, she was
A
she was also
sacrificial.
possessed in the
Yeah.
first. She was, sacrificed to the rape altar
Yeah.
of, Dagon, and then she returned in this as his wife. But two different characters.
Two different characters, but same wardrobe. So there you go. No, just kidding.
Right? Yeah, it fits. Why not?
It works. It
It's
works.
semi-clean.
It's, hey, it goes with the story. So there you go. You mentioned the locations. Yeah, you've got the Victorian house. You got the river area. Then you've got like you like had four locations in here. Were they all in the general same area or?
No, they were actually far. The woods was in Simi Valley. The Victorian house was in Glendale. I mean, they were all. The diner was in the valley. They were all
Sure.
probably 30 or 40 miles away from each
Mm.
other, so it was all kind of spread out. So it
Mhm.
kind of kept you on your toes, and you'd shoot 2 days or so at one location, and
Sure.
move to the other one, shoot there a couple days, and then move to the other one. And it's kind of a nice way to do it. You don't get too 9 days in one location or whatever. It can be pretty monotonous and boring, but moving around like that was it was actually a really fun shoot.
Yeah, I've got to say one of probably my favorite character out of all of the characters that you have here. I mean, I dug Russell Marsh. Don't get me wrong, but for me, I guess for some reason it was just Nyar Lothep,
That guy.
that guy with the very Lovecraftian name. I loved his character as well as his creature design as well.
Oh yeah,
That was wonderful with him, and I just love the big chest opening up piece and
yeah.
all of
Right,
that,
right.
which was again surprised me that most of that was practical. I mean,
Yeah.
that had to take some time to set up.
Oh, he was great. And one of the things, his name's Rico Anderson, and he was basically a last minute thing. We had a guy
Hmm.
all cast, ready to go. I mean, Robert Miano had found this guy, and he was great. He was, all set. And then, the day before filming, he calls up and says, "Hey, I've got COVID. I can't do it." And I'm
Oh,
like, "We're outside. You'll be fine. Just show up." And he's like, "No, I've got COVID. I can't do it." And he hangs up the phone. And I turn to Robin. I'm like, "That motherfucker. Who knows if he's got anything?" That's now the go-to excuse to get out of anything. And so I'm like, "Do you got anyone else?" And he's like, "Oh, let me call up Rico." And he called up Rico. And Rico, we sent him the script that night. He loved it. He showed up the next day, had his lines down, and nailed it. And I've been using him ever since. Every time I find a role, I call him up and say, "Hey, you want to do this? It's a small role, but pop on in." And he's a blast to work with, great personality and a great actor. And that effect, it was shot in one day and everything,
mhm.
and then got all his stuff just as the light is completely gone. I mean, it was completely. We had to basically. Then we went and shot the close-ups the next day of
Sure.
them going into the thing and whatever on a little sound stage, and some of the pickup lines of Tim Muscatel's character, reading Lovecraft dialogue
Right.
fluently and whatever. And so we reshot that just to have it, and then it cut it all in, and it worked fine.
It all works well. It looks great, and like I said, especially loved his line, "Kids." The way he hit that, it makes me chuckle every time I see that. It was just he just delivers that so well. It's like here's this big, you know, epic old god monster guy, and then he just delivers it like a regular kids. Yeah, it
Yeah, no,
was.
that was great.
Speaking of the dialogue, one thing that I did notice is uh, how challenging was it to make Lovecraftian dialogue work when spoken? Because it's not exactly like I said, he writes in an interesting prose. So, it's one of those you hear it in your head when you're reading it, but when
Right.
you actually say it out in conversation, that's a different beast entirely.
Right. Well, that's the thing. I first kind of discovered using that in the deep ones when Miano
Mhm.
was in the car with Kelly Maroney, and he just recites this great chunk of Lovecraft dialogue. And I was like, I'm going to try to incorporate that in this. And it was, just finding the right passages and whatever. And, what, and every time I write, it's kind of, saying it to myself or, talking out loud or whatever it might be to see if it's even, remotely entertaining you know, but, I love Lovecraft's writing. And for me, it's like, I love the sound of it and whatever, and some people may be turned off by it or whatever, but when you're making these things, you got to go with your gut instinct and what you enjoy and whatever, because I'm making the films for me first and foremost, and you hope it finds an audience, but that's not the
Sure.
reason I'm doing it. And if
Sure.
it were, I probably would be successful. Because then you're thinking, okay, what would that kid in Peoria want? And you're
Yeah.
kind of, oh, that's not offensive. Let's go with that. Whereas, I throw kind of everything into the wind. The N-word poem. I mean, that burned lots of bridges on this film. I mean, the Lovecraft Film Festival basically said, go fuck yourself. They saw this and they were like, they kind of stopped really taking my stuff. The
Yeah.
deep ones played really well there. And I'm like, oh, this film is going to get in no problem. And then they kind of just saw it and stopped returning my calls kind of thing. So it was a weird thing where, to me, they're a Lovecraft festival that loves Lovecraft and does all his stuff. To me, that poem is a major part of Lovecraft.
Right. It is a reflection a bit of Lovecraft, and you can't fully ignore that.
And end of the times, end of the way that things were. And if you keep trying to bury something because you find it offensive or racist or whatever the term may be these days, it's stifling art. That was, that's his art at the time, and you may find it offensive now, or you may find it like, wow, that's deep, But
Right.
I wanted to kind of throw it in there and bring it back, and I had, one of the, two investors were basically like, pull that out, or we're walking, and I said, go ahead and walk. I really don't give a shit. I find it refreshing, especially Rico's him saying it is great, and it's just got this kick to it that I think is something for me that I had to do artistically, that
Right.
whether it's right or whether it's wrong, I had to do it for me, and it worked.
Well, it worked, and you gave it to Rico, and I imagine if Rico would have had an issue with it, he would have said,
Yes.
Sorry, man, I can't. I know what this is saying, what it's alluded, what the day, I just can't, but he delivers it, and I do enjoy the fact that you don't use Lovecraftian dialogue all the time. It's almost only when you're interacting with when the old gods are kind of interacting with each other so they know who each other are. It's like
Right.
everybody's talking normally, but then the minute one of them just busts into Lovecraft dialogue similar to like busting into Shakespeare, all of a sudden like,
right.
Okay, you're an old god, I recognize you now.
It's like the secret handshake.
Yeah. So yeah, I enjoy the world you built and all the stuff you've got going on in this, and shooting it 9 days. It doesn't look like it was shot in 9 days. I'll tell you that.
Thank you.
It and it moves quite a bit. Was there stuff that you did find shooting in that time frame you had to cut that you wish you would have been able to include?
Gosh, I do the messed up thing. The good thing and the bad thing of making a couple of these a year, and you're able to basically forget about them completely until something like this, and I start remembering stuff and whatever. But it's one of those things where I just finished shooting the Ed Kemper film, and that so my mind is so far from Lovecraft.
Oh, sure.
This, and for that one, I don't think anything really major got lost. It's again one of those things when you're shooting a 90-page or 88-page script or something that's more condensed, you kind of get everything's really in there. Whereas 120-page script, you can lose 10-15 minutes easily, and not and I there's very few things that I would take out and regret it. It's like on the Ed Kemper film, I demanded a director's cut because there are offensive things that they wanted removed. And I said, well, we can either walk away from the deal, or you can just give me a director's cut that whether you release it or someone else release it, we will cross that bridge when we come to it. But to make this deal go forward, I get a director's cut that has anything that may offend, 90% of the people out there. I want that version.
Penis monsters, right?
I want that version to be put out by Vinegar Syndrome or whoever it might be someday, fingers crossed. And, most distributors are like, sure, go for it.
Hmm.
They don't know if a film's going to be a hit or whatever. They want whatever, and then they take the deal, and you're happy, I'm happy, and hopefully an audience will see it and like the version as much as I did, that retains things that normally would have ended up on a cutting room floor.
So I have to ask, and I hope you don't mind. I have to ask: do you put stuff in there occasionally? Is that to? Some people might take it as, "Oh, are you purposely trying to offend people, or are you just trying to tell a story that's in your head and telling the story you want, and whether or not people get offended or not, that's a byproduct, not a goal."
I don't think it's on purpose unless it's subconsciously. Something will strike me, whether it's, on the Ed Kemper film is a perfect example. I do a lot of, these films, of course, with no budget. And
Right.
when you need music or movies, the best source to find stuff is public domain.
Oh yeah. Absolutely.
So Al Jolson's The Jazz Singer just came up into public domain this year.
Yep.
So the Ed Kemper film has an amazing connection with him and his mother. I mean, it's basically the real life guy. He killed all these people because his mother was such a bitch to him.
Right.
And they had this, whatever the relationship that was just, it's just destructive. But they were together, and the destruction only manifested with their being together. So it hit me in this one scene that, I had to rewrite it from Steven Johnson's amazing script to fit our budget and the things. And I'm like, oh, the Al Jolson film. He's watching it on TV. The guy singing, Jolson singing Mammy to his mother, the connection with Ed Kemper and his mother, all these things kind of went together. And so I wrote it into the script, and everyone that, that read it is like, okay, that's going to be really offensive. People, you've got him watching Al Jolson in blackface singing Mammy. And I'm like, I really don't give a shit. It connects with this character. It's something that would have been on TV in the late 60s, early 70s. And it's in public fucking domain. I'm putting it in.
well, and not only that, I mean, it's not like you have your good guy watching this, right? You've got basically the bad guy watching this. So
yes,
if anything, that should enjoying it. So that should just make you despise that person even more. That the fact that they, that they have it. So that's interesting. Yeah, I mean, because I know I've talked to some other indie filmmakers too, and most of them kind of have that same where they're like, we're just telling the story. We're like, there are a couple of times where they're like, well, maybe that's pushing it even for me. But other times, they're like, no, we're going to leave that in because it serves the story. So I'm always curious on the opinion when it comes to stuff like that could trigger or offend some people. But from what it sounds,
But it's one of those things where, I got really excited by it and the idea of it, and then wrote it in. And then some people were like, they were automatically triggered by it, and they started just bringing this up. And I always bring up the same thing. I'm like, look, I'm going to shoot it this way, put it in this way, but also have a plan B.
Right.
And that is, if the distributor who wants to buy the film wants to take it out, wants to make it do whatever, I'm fine with that.
As long as you've got this cut, yeah.
As long as I have this cut. And that was kind of the happy medium of making. I'm not the kind of guy who says, no, this cut must be forever and only this. And I want Al Jolson on the poster, and I want, this. It's one of those things with, especially once I'm done with a film and once it's sold, I really don't give a shit. I hope it does well.
Right.
But I try to move on to other things. And if a movie's a success or a failure, I don't let it get me down, because it's, that kind of stuff could, put a bullet in your head. So I try to move on to another film and hope that'll be better than the last one, or different, or something that's, has, an artistic merit to it. So I just kind of try to keep busy with that and not dwell on what might be perceived as a failure or what might be perceived as a success. I just kind of say, well, that one's done. On to the next one.
You just keep creating, right?
You just got to keep doing what you're doing and not be hung up on it as like some amazing piece of art that needs to be, this whatever. It's like, if they have my cut and they bought the cut and they basically want to remove certain things, they can do that as long as my version is released.
as long as you get your reversion, if nothing else, as a special feature, if nothing else.
right. Hold on 1 minute.
Yeah, you bet. Yep.
Let me call you. That was Tim Muscatel asking how the interview's going.
Oh.
in Lovecraftian prose.
In Lovecraftian no, if it was Lovecraftian prose, you'd still be on the phone waiting for him to finish. That
True.
so, so is there one scene or whatnot in the old ones that it just particularly struck you that you're like, man, that we nailed that. I love that particular scene. I mean, I imagine you enjoy it overall. You've got it. It's your baby. But was there a particular scene in there where you're just like, chef's kiss? Like, yeah, that's it.
I love his hypnosis scene in the bathroom.
Yes.
That's one of my favorite things. Just the timing of it and the way they look, and for me it was a nice little scene.
Well, well, I love how it does just suddenly come up. It's like, oh, he can do that. Okay,
Right.
it's like
He's got Jedi mind tricks.
he's got Jedi mind trick, which is okay because it works. And yeah, you're two folks who end up being the victims of that sell it well, and it does
Right.
work. It does work into the plot a couple of minutes later. So I like that it does work into it. It's not just a gimmick that goes away. It's like, no, this served a purpose, and
Right, right, right.
and so I enjoyed that quite a bit. But yeah, old ones, I dug it quite a bit. I've seen it now 3 times. Uh,
Wow.
so and each time I appreciate it more, especially your practical effects in here. They really look good on camera. Even the mask, even the minor creatures, you
Sure,
know,
sure.
you but that's one of those things where I'm glad there's some detail in the minor creatures because sometimes you get that to where someone went to Spirit Halloween and grabbed a mask. Well, they're just going to be in the background. Nobody's going to notice.
Right, right.
But in the day of HD, you're like, hey, that's a Spirit Halloween mask.
Yeah, no, these were all masks that Joe had designed and he had in his shop, and he's just kind of like, hey, let's pull this one out. We've got this one. So he's like, if you've got people there, well, we've got masks for them. We can throw them in the back and we can do whatever. And, it was one of those things that you're thankful for because, otherwise you'd have like 2 guys back there and it's like, hey, we got pull her over, throw a mask on it, throw her over there. And at least make it look like there's, more than 2 monsters back
We need a grip. Can a grip come here? Yeah, here, hold on.
there.
Here,
Put
duct
it up.
tape. Just duct tape your face all the way around, and there you go. We got another creature. So, also, I just want to throw this out that TerrorVision Records, they had a thing where they needed to get rid of their warehouse. They were selling some things, and I just happened to pick, and I totally blanked that this was your film. I picked up
Ooh, that's
Parasites,
great.
their release of Parasites with this awesome slipcover
Oh, they
that
did a
comes.
great job with that.
Yeah, yeah. I love TerrorVision quite a bit. That's where I
Oh,
get
they're good.
a huge amount of my vinyl from. But
They're
yeah, I
doing a
just
whole bunch of records. They're releasing some Richard Band records
mhm.
soon. They just worked out a deal, so that's kind of neat. And the commentary on that is drunken and fun and exciting. So
look, I look forward to watching Parasites. So, you mentioned a couple irons in the fire. You've got, Beyond the Wall of Sleep out there. What else you got coming out that's coming out that you can mention this year?
uh,
Anything else, or
I
not till
think
2025?
I think Unspeakable Wall of Sleep is coming out in February.
Hmm.
Breaking Glass just picked that up, and Ed Kemper, we just sold that, but we don't have a release date yet, so
Okay.
that's coming. And then end of October we shoot Dorothea Puente story.
Exciting.
Another true crime. True crime.
No rest for the wicked, right?
Got to keep busy.
You gotta
Devil's
keep
hands and all that stuff.
absolutely. Where can folks keep up with you at all your stuff?
Just on Facebook or Twitter, or just type in my name and you'll find me.
You'll
Instagram, I'm out there.
he's very prolific in Google if you search for it. There's certain groups that are sitting there going, "I can't believe he did this," and
Right.
then I think there's a penis monster site out there somewhere. No, just kidding, just kidding.
Finally.
Finally, a site just devoted to penis monsters. Why not? There's a Facebook group that's devoted to Billy David Bowie's codpiece from Labyrinth. So
Hey, there's hope.
Well, there was. It's probably been taken down by now because of all the changes they made. But there was for quite some time. There was a cod piece. There was David Bowie's cod piece and Labyrinth group,
Ooh, that's
appreciation group.
great.
Yeah. So, well, thank you, Chad, very much. Yes, folks, it is coming to the Sawdust City Fright Fest in about 10 days from
Wow.
this recording. Very excited to show it to the audience there. They're always appreciative of indie films. And so come to the Sawdust City Fright Fest, middle of Wisconsin, Oshkosh, Wisconsin, 11th and 12th. Check out Chad's stuff. Thank you. Always a pleasure, sir. This really is becoming a habit. And yeah, when your next one comes out, why not? Let's get together again and talk because I'd love to chat.
Let's do it. Thanks
Sounds
for
good. Well, thank you. And thank you all for listening. And yeah, check it out.